Why is Theodore Roosevelt considered a progressive? Have you ever wondered why Theodore Roosevelt stands out as a progressive figure in American history? His presidency marked a significant shift in the Republican Party and the nation itself. Roosevelt took office in the early 20th century, a time when the United States faced numerous social and economic challenges. Unlike many of his Republican peers, he embraced reforms that aimed to improve the lives of everyday Americans. One of Roosevelt's key commitments was civil service reform. He believed that government jobs should be filled based on merit rather than political connections. This was a bold move that aimed to reduce corruption and inefficiency in government. By advocating for a merit-based system, he set a new standard for how public service should operate. Roosevelt also became known for his trust-busting efforts. He recognized that some large corporations held too much power, which could harm competition and consumers. By breaking up monopolies, he aimed to promote fairness in the marketplace. This approach was not typical for a Republican at the time, as many favored minimal government intervention. Another area where Roosevelt made a significant impact was conservation. He was passionate about preserving the nation's natural resources. During his presidency, he established numerous national parks and wildlife refuges. His commitment to conservation reflected a growing awareness of environmental issues, which was quite progressive for that era. Workers' rights were also a priority for Roosevelt. He supported labor unions and pushed for better working conditions, including the implementation of 8-hour workdays for federal employees. This was a significant step toward improving labor standards and showed his willingness to stand up for the working class. Additionally, Roosevelt proposed new taxation measures, such as an income tax and an inheritance tax, to address wealth inequality. This was a departure from traditional Republican views that often favored lower taxes and less government involvement in the economy. These progressive policies ultimately led to a split within the Republican Party. In 1912, Roosevelt ran for president under the newly formed Progressive Party, often referred to as the Bull Moose Party. This party highlighted his progressive agenda, advocating for social insurance, farm relief, and health care reform. From the perspective of the Republican Party, Roosevelt's progressive stance was a departure from its traditional values. While the party often emphasized limited government and free market principles, Roosevelt recognized the need for reform to address pressing social and economic issues. His actions laid the groundwork for future discussions about accountability and fairness in both government and business. In summary, Theodore Roosevelt is considered a progressive due to his commitment to reforming political and economic systems. His legacy continues to influence discussions within the Republican Party and American politics today.